Hello.
Hey, how are you, my darling?
All good. How's it going?
Do you know, like, touch wood really well. And I'm really enjoying it. I had a few people message being like, enjoy, and like if you'd said that to me this time yesterday, I'd be like, just, you know, yes, you can imagine. But no, I am. And I think, like I say, well, we're what? Got my math, 6, 7, 8, 9, 4.5 hours in, and the tech has worked. So touch wood, it will continue.
I saw
Um,
Karen this morning doing her breath work.
oh, isn't she great?
Amazing.
Yeah. So, and also, well, like I did, it was great as well because she did an hour. I was able to do some of it and then be like, hey, la. So, no, she's great, isn't she? And as are of all the speakers been, and now you. So, Nicole, I'll let you introduce yourself properly, but I guess just in I guess a way of a brief intro. Nicole and I we met in person, didn't we, at the Business and Babies Resilience Summit, which was about what, 2, 3 weeks ago
3 weeks
now.
ago now. It goes fast, doesn't it?
Isn't it? It's then when you're like, oh, Christmas is really around the corner. Excuse me. And actually, we weren't connected, were we? Because when I got the list of speakers through, I was like, oh, let's connect with everyone. And then I knew that Nicole and I were going to get on because within like a second of me, connecting on LinkedIn, she's like, hey, like left me a voice note. And then I'm like, oh, blah, 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 blah. And then, yes, I got to see Nicole in action. Um, yeah, on everything sleep related at the summit. So I am going to hand over sort of to you to do a much better introduction than that. I'm going to nip off screen just because I need to plug in the iPad and do a couple of those bits. But yeah, so tell us what led you to where you are and what you're doing now.
Hi everybody, and thank you for joining. And thanks for, this is an amazing thing that Kim's doing. And actually, part of what this is all about kind of links to some of the stuff that I'll be telling you about anyway, within the sort of maternal side and the mental health aspect of things. Um, but yeah, so this all started is I had my first little girl back in 2016, and I did all the things that they tell you to do. So we paid for the NCT classes to make friends, as they say, and get the best antenatal education you can possibly get. And I thought I was prepared. I thought I was naturally maternal and I was going to be the best mum in the world. And I was put on this planet to be a mum. That's genuinely what I thought. I had a good job. I earned great money. Do you know what I mean? Everything was just really good. I'd always set myself up to do this whole kind of right. I've got to have my order. I've got to meet the right guy that I plan to spend the rest of my life with. I've got to get married. I've got to buy a house. I've got to do all these things before I have kids because then everything is set. Do you know what I mean? The ground is set. So we've done all that. And then, I've gone to these antenatal classes and they've gone, oh, breastfeeding's the most natural thing in the world. They just work their way up the body and they just latch on. You go, oh, okay then. Newborn babies sleep all the time. You go, oh, wow, that's really good. And they say, make sure you've got your birth plan, they say, don't they? Make sure you've got that birth plan so you can tell the midwives exactly what it is that you want. And then you go into labor and your birth's nothing like they actually thought it was going to be, and you end up with an emergency C-section and nobody listens to you, and you're made to feel like you're dramatic and it's all put on. And breastfeeding, wow, yeah, that was not going to plan. Poor education, poor advice from the medical professionals around breastfeeding, medications, sleep. What was that? Do you know what I mean? And it was like, I went, this is not what they said. This is not what I was prepared for. I am not set up for, having been sliced open, to the point where it was at 6 o'clock in the morning. We've got to get the baby out. 17 minutes past, she was there.
Oh.
And you kind of go, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. And there was no that debrief was while I was coming round after I kept dropping in and out of consciousness. I only found out years later that I'd had a debrief. you know, Ah!
You're like, wow, maybe
Yeah,
need to
so
process that.
exactly. Do you know what I mean? And you kind of go, and then you've got my husband that's got trauma. Do you know what I mean? Because he's watched the whole thing unfold. You know what I mean? And nobody thinks about them. And it was like what was meant to be, or what was sold to me as wonderful, ended up being probably one of the most traumatic and frightening moments. And we were not set up for the reality. The expectation was not met. And it set us up on the back foot right from the beginning. And everything I thought I knew was just not there. It was just didn't happen. And we've just started on a really bad path. And it took 5.5 weeks before we got breastfeeding established. And I say this because I'm going to kind of end up probably just waffling on because I'm kind of thinking we've got an hour here to talk. So this can be a really good part to kind of educate people as to, what not to do or how to empower you to ask questions and challenge. So one of the things that I found out is doctors don't always know everything. And we put our faith in doctors and medical professionals and things like that. And we trust them because we think that they know what they're doing. What we don't realize until we kind of hit that point is they can't know everything because the advice is changing all of the time. New evidence is found out. There's new research that's coming out, and actually, there's only so much information that they can get taught and what they can specialize in. So when my health visitors were trying to push me to formula feed my brand new baby that was just not breastfeeding, and we were struggling. And the health visitor is like, no, you need to formula feed to top her weight up. And I was like, well, no, I'll express. And so I expressed, got birth weight up, but then I had an infection, which I was told I didn't have, by the way, from the hospital, which I knew I did have. Because I was on immunosuppressants and I knew that I was going to get infections because it was one of them things I could have the slightest thing and I'd get an infection. Um, so I knew my body and it turned out I did have an infection. And the GP told me that you can't breastfeed on metronidazole. So we're just about got the birth weight up. We're just about to start trying to get breastfeeding going again. And I get told, no, you can't. So we had to do a week of formula feeding, which I then found out a long time later that you can breastfeed on metronidazole. So I will say to anybody that is going to have a baby, check out Breastfeeding and Medication Network because then you've always got the advice you need at your fingertips. And if you don't know something, you can challenge the experts for them to actually go off and do their research. And a consultant said to me, the best thing you can do is to challenge us. He says, because we can't keep on top of everything.
No, like you say, there's it's I guess everything evolves, doesn't it? But I think, that the knowledge in terms of medicine and science and all of those sorts of things evolve. And I think as well, just to share, and again, I'm not, for anyone listening, this is as well, I think for me being a mum as well, it's all around what works the time for you and that baby, isn't it? And so sometimes it's breastfeeding, sometimes it's formula, sometimes it's both. And at the end of the day, I think there's so much you could find there's strong opinions for both ends of the scale, aren't there? And I
Totally.
think, that the biggest thing I think, and particularly when we think about our own mental health, is about, you have to do what is working for you at the time, and actually fundamentally then for the baby. Because if you really this dream that you're going to breastfeed but it's not working, then the baby's say losing weight or something, then at the end of the day it's got to
I
do what's
totally agree. And
right.
with that, though, but that should be where, as far as I'm concerned, anyway, that should be where, if that's what you choose to do and you want to do something, just to bear, sorry, there's a little bit of a backstory to this. I was told I wasn't going to be allowed to breastfeed because of the medication I was on. So there was a part in my head which,
Mm.
yes, I've got my ADHD assessment in January. So a lot of stuff's starting to make sense with me as to the way that I kind of work. And I'd kind of gone, no, I've found out I can breastfeed now. I want to breastfeed. So because I had made that decision, that was my focus. So that was what I wanted to do. And it felt like everywhere I turned from a support aspect, it wasn't there. The health visitors were pushing the formula. When I was in the hospital, I caught the midwife about to give my baby formula without my consent. Oh God, I hit the roof. I absolutely hit the roof because I'm like, this is not, it was like everything was been taken out of my hands by other people. So it was like that in the hospital they were trying to do it. The health visitors were trying to push it. The GP gave me advice that made me do it. Do you know what I mean? So it was
Yeah.
like
And all at a
nothing
time
was
when
on
you're
my
really
terms.
vulnerable.
Yeah, and nothing was on my terms with it. So I knew what I wanted to do, but I was being stopped at every point.
Yeah.
Um, and it took until 5.5 weeks when I saw an IBCLC, obviously, your gold standard breastfeeding consultants. And she literally, within half an hour, she went boom, 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 stuck her on and went, that's it. Took photographs, everything like that, so I could practice at home. And it changed everything. She just started to feed.
Yeah.
And it was like all it took was one person who really knew what they were doing to actually sort it out. And it's the fact it took so long. And
Mm.
it was my mum going, this isn't right. I'd gone to stay with her for a few days. She went, this isn't normal. She went, I didn't breastfeed. She says, but this just doesn't look normal.
Mm.
It's like she went off and got a dummy from the, I was again against a dummy. And she went, I'm going to get one. And she went to the chemist, came back with a dummy. And it was the fact it even just gave me 10 minutes of respite because she was just attached all the time. She wasn't latching properly.
Mm.
And it was awful. But so then it was like, right, well, the sleep's got to surely improve now. We've sorted the
Mm.
breastfeeding out. The sleep's surely going to improve.
Yeah.
But it didn't. And we would on the back foot with the sleep right from the beginning. And we're talking now, 4 months into her life, me and my husband were in marriage counselling because
Right.
it was that bad and nobody
Mm.
had prepared us for how we were going to feel, how we could support each other through that,
Mm.
um, how what it was that our brain actually needed for the purposes of being able to actually function. I mean, I
Mm.
set off to mother care and only realised halfway there I'd not strapped her in the car. You know, a brand new baby in the back seat of the
Mm.
car, and I'm driving. I just went, oh, God.
Yeah. Oh, well, we're all like, 80s babies where it's just chuck you in the bassinet and back anyways.
Exactly.
We're all fine.
But it was that every time I drive
Yeah.
past that lay-by now, do you know what I
Oh,
mean? It still gets me, yeah. And we're talking over 8 years ago, 8.5 years ago. And I don't think that will ever kind of go. I'll never forget where I pulled in and was like, I can't believe I've done this.
mm.
But that's what it does to you is that sleep deprivation is it's frightening where it can take you.
Mm.
And we kind of go into marriage counselling, we'd come out arguing. Like, this isn't what it's meant to be. You go to marriage counselling because you're supposed to be getting better. But what we hadn't realised is the fact that because we weren't sleeping, there was no part of our brain that was coping at all. We had no ability, either of us, to regulate our emotions in any way, shape, or form. It was just we're still together now. Do you know what I mean? We've got a second one, but we kind of look back and we go, how did we get through that? Because we it was so bad. And by the time she was 7 months, I went to the health visitor. Now, by this point, I'd been to the health visitor so many times and asking questions. As a new mum, as you are, you want to make sure you're doing right by your children, don't you? And I didn't understand. I remember them saying, "So you're going to do baby-led weaning then?" I went, "Oh, yeah, of course I am. Of course I'm going to follow baby's lead." Because that's genuinely what I thought it meant. I'm going to follow what my baby says. I didn't realize it meant you just don't do purees and you give them because nobody tells you these things. And I went away and Googled it and went, oh, that's what it is. Oh, okay, then I'll find out more about that. But it's assumptions that we already know these things,
Mm.
um, and we don't. And I remember I got labelled by them as an anxious mum. Oh no, you're just an anxious mum. No, I'm not an anxious mum. I just want to get it
Not
right.
patronizing at all.
Exactly. No, I just want to get it right. And I know that there'll be
Mm.
people that watch this that go, that's me. That's what happened with me. Because we seem to be stuck in this thing where if you want to get it right, if you ask questions, because there isn't any support, if you ask questions because you want to do best by your child, you must be anxious. And it's like, well, how are you supposed to do this? You don't start a job. You don't literally just kind of start a job and have no one teaching you how to use the systems,
Mm,
or
mm,
how to actually navigate the software or whatever it is. Do you know
mm,
what I mean? You don't have
mm.
that. You have somebody that teaches you things and
Yeah,
educates
holds your
you.
hand a little bit.
Absolutely. But
Yeah,
that with parenting, it's kind of like there's an internet, off you go. You're,
yeah,
you mean there's an internet?
yeah.
And
Which
we're
sometimes
going
is
to do it.
the worst thing, isn't it? Because you're suddenly like,
Absolutely awful.
goodness, what's wrong with them?
Yeah.
So tell me then, tell us, Nicole, then a bit about how then you channeled like your experience into what you
Yeah.
do now.
So when she was 8.5 months, bearing in mind, I'd been to the health visitor when she was 7 months, and they told me to try the Solihull technique, which was basically controlled crying, which resulted in my baby crying rise out on in the cot and me sitting on the top of the stairs crying my eyes out listening to her. And it was horrific. So it didn't work. And by the time she was 8.5 months, a friend recommended a sleep consultant. And we had no money, but we kind of went, well, actually, what's cheaper, this or a divorce? And that was the turning point. Because that was all there was. It was either a divorce or we kind of do something about it. So we went, well, we've got to give it a try because a divorce is more expensive, and we don't want to do that anyway. Um, and it changed everything. And I'm not saying she started sleeping through the night straight away or anything, but we got our evenings back and we got blocks of sleep. Do you know what I mean? And that thing of having that blocks of sleep, and there was the odd night of us sleeping through as such. Wow. And I just kind of went, hang on, how have we got from what we've just had for 8.5 months to within a matter of days, this? And actually, it was the education piece, and I couldn't stop talking about it. And I'd be in the park and I'd be pushing her on the swings, and I'd be going, so how does your baby sleep then? Oh, well. And I just couldn't stop talking about it. And I always wanted to run my own business, but there was never anything that I felt passionate enough about. Because obviously, if you're running a business, you have got to be literally eating, breathing, sleeping the business because it's like it takes over, doesn't it?
Mm. Don't know
And
what you're talking
yeah.
about.
And I was like, right, anyway, I went back to work and I had to fight to go back part time. So I went back part time and I was in a field sales job, which was just,
Oh,
yeah. And I was driving around and I was falling asleep on the motorway. I was falling asleep in between my appointments. I went from being one of the top performers in the business to one of the worst in the business. And at the time, I didn't understand why. Obviously, looking back, I totally know. There was nothing there. Do you know what I mean? There was just nothing working. And here, people would walk past me. I'd go, do you want? And they'd go, no. And okay. It's like, yeah, I wasn't really going to be doing any sales there, was I? And I'd just be sat there going, I can't. I've just got nothing.
yeah.
And the support I got from my manager at the time was non-existent. And it was, I don't feel safe to do my job. Well, you can. There's nothing else you can do, so it's either get on with it, or maybe you should be at home. Go home. Oh no, I've got bills to pay. Got targets to
Mm,
hit. You're already putting me on performance improvement plans. You're already trying to manage me out of the business. I've just got to keep on going.
mm,
So I actually
mm,
put my life and so many other people's lives at risk by carrying on and not
mm,
having that support. Yet I'd had to sign a contract when I went back to work saying that I wouldn't drive tired. And it stated how many accidents happen every single week in work time, work related traffic accidents. And you just go, this is crazy.
yeah.
Um, and while I was working, an opportunity came up to start um, studying sleep with the person I'd initially hired to help me. And I went, this is what I want to do. And I'd heard redundancies were on the cards. And I went, right, okay. So I took a loan, started studying while I was working, and I literally got made redundant at the exact same time that I'd just finished my course. So I took my redundancy money and set the business up. And I just started helping people on a one-to-one basis. Um, but quickly realized that that wasn't enough information. You've got to keep on learning. So I went
Yeah.
off and I did holistic sleep coaching. Um, then I kind of went, and then I hit more battles with my then 2-year old deciding that actually that she wasn't going to sleep anymore So we'd gone through this wonderful stage where they sleep,
Mm.
and people don't tell you when they're two, things can be really, really challenging. Don't know if you remember. They go, "Oh, I've got my little independent spirit now, and I'd like to test some boundaries, and I'm going to push." And you go, "What's this all about? Hang on a minute. You were fine before. What do you mean you don't want a nap? No, no, no,
Mm.
you've got a nap. What do you mean you don't want to
Mm.
stay in your bed? No, no, you go to bed.
Mm.
What's this all about?" And we went back to 2 hours a night again when she came out of a cot. And it was just horrific. And I very quickly learned that actually it's not about sleep at that point. So I went, and this is part of the thing that we'll talk about in a bit. I totally had a breakdown. This was around the Christmas time back in 2018, it would be. And I went to the GP and I'm going, I can't cope. I don't know what's going on. And I felt frightened to be around my daughter because of how tired we were and how angry I was. Um, so they referred me to what is now CBT. They're not allowed to call it anger management anymore. And I went to anger management. And yes, okay, got some useful strategies. Didn't fix the problem though, because the problem was I wasn't sleeping.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter how many strategies you've got. If you've not got any capacity to sleep, for your brain to actually function, you can't function.
And
So
sorry,
then,
Nicole, are you talking then about your, I guess, does that link back to sort of almost the emotional regulation piece
yeah,
that we spoke
absolutely.
about
Because
earlier? Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Because for your brain to actually process and to rest up, to give you that ability to regulate your emotions, you have to be sleeping. And
Yeah.
this tends to happen in that second half of the night. So you've got the way the sleep works, you've got two different types. You've got your non-REM, which is your really deep sleep. So that's the restorative sleep. That's the stuff which is for your immune system development, your growth hormones, your body healing, all that type of stuff. And then you've got your REM sleep. So that's for things like your brain detoxing, your memory consolidation. It's all your emotion regulation. It's all these things, problem solving abilities. And that tends to happen in your REM sleep. Now, the way that night sleep is split up is the first half of the night is predominantly the really deep sleep, so the non-REM. The second half is predominantly the REM sleep. So as the night goes on, you get less of the non-REM and more of the REM. It's just the way the split works, but it's just sleep cycle after sleep cycle after sleep cycle. So we just go like this through the night. So there's no such thing as sleeping through. It's just you come out of a sleep cycle and you move into another one. This is where people struggle when they wake up in the night because what's happened is they've just come out of a sleep cycle and then something's happened. If the brain's switched on or the cortisol levels are too high or they're stressed, they might struggle to go back to sleep. And it tends
Right.
to be in that second half because the REM sleep is that lighter sleep. And if you think it's a lighter stage of sleep, you've already had however many hours of rest beforehand, it becomes a really hard task to actually go back to sleep at that point, especially because if your brain switches on. So it's a really difficult, and obviously it's the same with children as well. But yeah, so we need that. And if what tends to happen is that second half of the night for us as adults is when the children tend to be awake for the majority of it. So we're literally not having, we don't have, we're just not getting the opportunity for our brain to do what it needs to do for us to be able to actually regulate our emotions. And what then tends to happen is we feel guilty and we don't understand this as adults because nobody's told us this. What we've been told is, oh, your children have got no ability to regulate their emotions. So we're thinking to ourselves that our children have got no ability to regulate their emotions. So we've got to be able to manage ours. But yet nobody says to you, actually, no, if you're not sleeping, you've got no ability to regulate your own. So you've got to kind of put your oxygen mask on a little bit first, and you've got to find a way to look after yourself in order to be able to help your children. And they're copying us. So if we can't do it, they've got no chance because we're modeling
Yeah.
the sorts of behaviors. So yeah, and I look back and I go, well, I wasn't modeling great stuff back then. So there was no chance of actually being able to get anywhere. And so I went off and I did the Incredible Years course, which is about parenting behaviors and all these types of things and boundaries. And I was able to kind of take what I learned from that, mix that with all my sleep studies and my education. And that's when I went, right, this is how I can fix it. And this is where there's a lot of issues within the sleep industry for children, because you have your sleep consultants, which do babies,
Mm,
do children, but they don't get a parenting kind of education. And then
mm,
you get your parent specialists that don't have the same sleep education.
mm.
So there's a bit of a crossover. So actually, where I kind of went was, well, I'd paid the person who I was who trained me in sleep to help me with my actual sleep, and she couldn't, because actually it wasn't to do with sleep. It was to do with all this over here. But actually, that on its own wouldn't have fixed the sleep. I had to have the understanding of the sleep to be able to connect the
Right.
dots.
Yeah.
Um, so I had that, and then I got pregnant, and then it was like second baby came 6 days before we went into lockdown, and he was good. I went,
Great
oh!
timing.
I was like, oh my god! By this time, I'd already taken like my courses online, so I'd already kind of took my training online to try and help people, and create sleep courses. Um, but then and then obviously I kind of developed it after that, because what happened is when I had it, I mean, I'll never forget this for as long as I live. I was in the park with Sophia, my eldest, and I was heavily pregnant. And I met this other mum, and she was telling me her sister was due her baby. And she texted me. We must have been a few days into lockdown. And she texted me to tell me that her sister had had a baby and was having to send photographs of her sanitary towel to the midwife to ask questions. And I
Oh my God.
went,
I love this when people share things that you're like, okay, you do know that I'm about to go through this myself. And
no,
actually, there's
no,
some
I'd
things I just
already
don't
had
need to
mine.
know.
Well, I'd already had her. So I'd had
Oh,
mine six
okay.
days before,
Oh, yes, of course you
six
did.
days before
Yeah.
lockdown.
Yeah.
So this was literally as it was happening. And I went, this isn't right. And I just remember thinking, if I'd had the experience I had with my eldest at that point, I don't think I'd have made it. So I ended up setting up a support group on Facebook, which we ended up with like 6,000 people in, and I brought in feeding specialists, doulas, midwives, you know what I mean, and stuff like that, to try and support people
Amazing.
through that. So it's all been about everything I do. It's all about trying to support people and help people. And I was like, you've just had a baby. Why are you doing this? I was like, I'm doing this because I've just had a baby, and because I can't stand the idea that there's other people that could be
Mm,
going through what I first went through
mm.
right now, with no support. And the idea that someone has to send a photograph of the
I
sanitary
know
towel.
there's some things you're like, come on, there's some things that just never happen. So can I ask,
Exactly.
did you, so with your second, obviously you had sorry, iPad. So had you, were you able to then employ what you had learnt in terms of sleep and stuff with your second
Oh,
baby,
too
and
right.
how did they sleep?
Yeah, there was no chance we were going through that again. But to be fair, she was a totally different breed, and we hadn't had a traumatic birth. And I do think the
Mm,
trauma does impact things as well. So but we'd had a totally different experience, and I knew what I was doing. And actually she was much easier. Um, so yeah, for me, but then obviously I say that, but then obviously I knew what I was doing, so I put strategies in place to make sure we didn't kind of go back to where we'd been, because we couldn't do that. We couldn't. The fear was just unreal, absolutely unreal, that we could possibly go through that again. And especially during COVID times as well, when there was like no support. So no, couldn't do that. But what I did do is I went, and then because I'd already gone online with my courses, I then, when she turned, she was 18 months, and when she went to university, not university, 18 months, nursery.
so advanced.
So advanced, 18 months in uni. When she started nursery, and then went and created extra online courses, which were that sort of 20 months to 6 years, which,
Mm,
like I was saying before, and then obviously the pregnancy part through those first sort of 5 months. So that reality to try and help people so they're not stuck in this kind of like what they think's going to happen, and then
yeah.
ended up going, whoa, actually, do you know what? Let's make sure you're better educated and prepared. But I very quickly realized that actually this is just so hard, because everybody had gone online during COVID as well. So obviously my business went because I had a baby and a 4-year-old at home. And I went, actually, I'd not lost the passion for it, but I'd lost the having to try and fight to be heard about something that nobody really wanted to know about. All right, let me explain. So, what I learned, even though everybody who did my passport to parenthood course who was pregnant went, this is amazing, nobody would still do it because nobody knew that they needed it. So I was thinking, right, well, how we all know that once the baby arrives and somebody has that kind of difficult start, we know that things aren't quite what they thought it would be because we've been there. We know from an employer's perspective that people are leaving the workforce. We know that there are so many things that aren't right on this side post baby. And the I'm about to have a baby people don't get the information and they don't want to, it's not that they don't want to think past the birth. They genuinely believe what they've been told in these antenatal classes that it's going to be as wonderful as they've been told. So they're not preparing. So they're not looking for that thing about sleep because they've been told all this other
Yeah.
stuff.
There's not like,
So
I don't need to seek a solution. And also, I guess there's almost that, yeah, you sort of like, well, I don't know what type of baby I'll have and all that.
exactly.
And, you know,
So I went, right, so how do we actually change this? Because the prenatal stuff, this antenatal, there's got to be a change somewhere. These people have got to be supported if we're going to help them once they've had the baby. Where can this be done? And I thought, actually, do you know what? Corporate's probably a place to actually go because I started doing more research into things. And obviously, that's when I found out that 54,000 new mums leave the workforce every single year. And you go, that's not nothing. And that's just in the UK.
mm,
And when you look into it further from other research I've done, that's actually 1 in 4 of the mums that are leaving the workforce. They're
mm,
leaving their jobs after, after they've had their baby. You know, why? That's a cost to a business. And that's not just a financial cost as in recruitment, but that's that loss of talent, that loss of experience. So, but what is it that's doing that? So actually, when you start looking into things, so I started a research project and I published a paper called Breaking the Silence, Revealing the Truth About Parenting in the Workplace. And what we did is we went and surveyed, it was 520 parents in the end as to their experience when they went back to work. It didn't paint a pretty picture at all, in the sense of the parents not supported when they went back, the toxic management, um, the whole kind of being absolutely exhausted, but expected to just be
still
able to
deliver.
manage like they'd
Yeah.
never had a child.
And was
Um,
this, sorry, can I ask them, was this, so you mentioned parents, so was it dads as well
yes,
as
it was. Now
mums you
we're
interviewed?
talking
Yeah.
about, to be fair, at the time we were talking about 93%, I think, were actually women that filled the survey in. It does need to change, but every time we do it, we try to get more men involved. But at the time, no, it was mostly women that were
Mm.
filling this in. Um, and there was some heartbreaking statistics in there, and there was some frightening statistics in there as well. So I went, right, this is where we've got to change things. It's got to be within the business sector because as an employer, if you can put a bit of finance, a bit of investment into your employee before they go off on maternity, you're more likely, and as they come back into work, you're much more likely to retain them, especially if their child is sleeping better and that person's mental health is better because they had a better experience than they would have done. Again, that didn't kind of work because people were going, yeah, but we'll just not employ women of parenting age. I'll just put
Hopefully they
people
didn't
off.
say that out loud, but
Yes, it's yeah, that well, there's some statistics in the second report that showed that, 40% of people actually did consider not employing parenting age people. Yes, it's quite frightening. Um, yeah, it's not a good picture out there. And yeah, so everyone went, right, actually, this is great that you've done this. Now you know what the size of the problem is and what is impacting, but now you need to tell businesses how much it's costing them. I went,
yeah,
oh, goodness me. So I started another research project. I went, right, let's see how much this is really costing people. Let's see what the economic cost is. And actually, it's quite frightening. Lack of sleep's costing the UK economy £40 billion a year just from poor sleep. We're looking at, so Gravitate HR have worked it out to be £1,035 per person every single year. And one in
Wow. And is that
three people.
across, that's not just parents,
No, no,
or
this is
that is
nationally. So
across?
this is,
Yeah.
forget parents. This is this. We are
Yeah.
in the middle of a sleep epidemic.
Yeah.
We are, it's not getting any better. So
Yeah.
one in three people are struggling with sleep, and 43% of workers are sleep deprived. And the cost is currently sitting at £1,035 per employee per year. So if you think about that as one in three that's struggling, well, that's over £3,000 per year per employee that's struggling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Then you've got the
That's
parent aspect to this as well. So, and also you've got the gender equity side of it. So what we're finding through our research is actually women are naturally at a disadvantage when it comes to sleep as well. Because not only have we got the societal aspects of things of kind of making us go, as parents, as women, we take on the lion's share of the parenting tasks, which again has thrown out that women are doing 60% more unpaid domestic labour than men, which includes their caregiving, so night wakings, carrying the mental load of everything, 60% more. It's quite a frightening statistic with that. So we've got the societal expectations, but then we've also got the biological factors as well. So things like the way that the hormones are affected when you've had a baby and how it affects your sleep. Then you've also got menopause that we go through. So we actually are we are at a disadvantage totally when it comes to sleep, but there isn't actually any support for sleep in workplaces. It's not something that's actually taken seriously. So I was like, right, okay, so we've got a huge big problem here. It's not just about parents anymore. Looking at all these statistics, we've actually really got to make sleep the main topic here. We've got to kind of boost it up the
sort of
food
leverage
chain.
it, raise the agenda. So
Yeah.
how practically do you do that then in the work that you do with the workplace sleep coach
Oh,
and baby to sleep, Nicole?
there's lots of things. So we can, there's the simple stuff, which is a bit of an education for the actual employees that can be done through things like your lunch and learns and stuff like that and workshops. But then you've got, and that kind of then puts the onus on the individual. So we're kind of saying, right, well, as a business, we'll educate you on
Yeah.
what good sleep can look like and the impact of doing nothing about it and how you can improve it. And if you need more help, obviously you can go and get more help, but at least you've got some basics covered. But then you've got the bit where actually we ran a case study with a company called Atlanta Group towards the beginning of this year, where we put my online courses into the workplace. The staff had half an hour a day for a week to go through those courses. So they boosted their education, they boosted their knowledge. And what happened is they went away and implemented strategies that suited their needs, their family. And what we saw is their sleep improved, their child sleep improved, their sleep improved, their anxiety levels got better, their mental health improved, and their workplace productivity improved. One of the people who took part in the actual project said that work that had got to the point of taking 3 to 4 hours to complete and needed a second pair of eyes to check over it was back to taking 1 hour again. And this was all because she was sleeping, because her child was sleeping. And you kind of go, that's a huge thing. So that kind of proved for me the thing that actually, if we can help parents in the workplace improve their child's sleep, that's only going to have a positive impact in the workplace. And when, again, the research shows that I think it's 59%, I think it was, 59% of parents are sleep deprived up to 6 years after the baby's born. You're kind of going, it's huge. You're kind of going, this is a big part of it. And I think it was 69% said that their main reasons for struggling with sleep was having a third party, like a child, waking them up through the night.
A third party, I love it.
Well, no,
Well, I
the
had
reason we say third parties because it could be that they're a carer to a parent or something like that, so that there's
yeah,
another there's something that's out of their control
yeah, yeah, it isn't
that's
them.
impacting their sleep.
Yeah.
Um, so you kind of go, well, actually, we've got to do something here where we acknowledge that this isn't necessarily the employee directly that has a sleep issue. There is
Mm.
something somewhere in
Other
their
things,
life that
but
is
yeah,
impacting this.
yeah.
How do we help them fix that?
Mm.
So actually, this person is coming into work
Mm.
safe to do their job, And this is the bit that's really important. It's the safety aspect. So the first research paper we actually did, that showed. So the question was asked: how old was your baby or child when they started sleeping well enough for you to function safely in your job? Not to do it well, just to do it safely. 40% said between 18 months and 3 years. 22% said post 3 years. So we know now up to 18 months, 62% of parents were not even safe to do their job.
Wow.
That's
Yeah,
massive, and then if
yeah,
you think about
that's
the other way,
scary,
that's
isn't it? And I think it's
78% up to 3 years, you know.
I think it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think, having worked I've worked in I guess FMCG companies before where, you've got the head office and you've got sort of manufacturing sites, and I was normally in the head office, but more recently I did spend some time in the manufacturing sites. And what did strike me is that actually, health and safety really is at the really at the core of everything, to the point where you get like the jokes from head office on, health and safety, or you can't do anything, you can't, run up the stairs or chew gum or like whatever. But actually, it's, as you say, driving is something that so many of us do. And that, like in the job where you said you're, field sales, okay, obviously you're doing a lot of driving and that's the core part of your job. But actually the amount of people that, even if it is just their commute, then actually, I'm not afraid to, we've all been there where you're on them and you cannot keep your eyes open, and it's, and get the jolt of and then you're like, oh, opening the window and you're like,
Yeah,
oh, come
music's on
on.
full blast. You're literally
Yeah,
peeling your eyes up like
yeah,
this.
yeah.
Yeah. But did you
So,
see the statistic I put out the other week about how far you drive if you close your eyes for 3 to 4 seconds?
share it, because and you shared it on LinkedIn. I
It's
saw it.
absolutely terrifying. If you close your eyes for 4 seconds on a motorway, that's it. You've just driven the full length of a football pitch.
Wow, isn't that so scary? Because you think, is it just force it? You're like,
That's
and
it.
yeah, anything could have happened. Um, yeah,
It's
so
frightening. Absolutely
it's
frightening.
frightening. It's frightening, and
And
I
it's
think
not taken seriously. But yeah, from a health and safety perspective, as you're saying, we know that actually, how many, if do you know what? There's a part of me that wonders whether we should get insurance companies on board with something like that turns around to businesses and do you know what? If you can put support in for sleep, we can potentially reduce your insurance premiums because it's been thought that 20% of
that is a
workplaces
really
actually
good idea. You should do that, Nicole. Have
part
the
of my plan.
conversations. You can be like, oh, by the way, if anyone's interested in funding me or doing a research funding, then da, da,
Yeah.
da, da, da. So I'm really conscious of times. That is already 11:15.
Told you I could talk.
It was funny. I was doing prep yesterday, and Nicole was like, I'm really not worried. We're not going to run out of conversation. I was like, no, I definitely know we're not going to run out of conversation. But I guess in terms of then bringing it sort of back to, so I guess let's think. So obviously today, it's all around raising money for Mind. And then in terms of today and all the speakers that are kindly joining, yourself included, is around, supporting us, show ourselves, kindness. So what, I guess, and then we'll come to talking about how people can find you and what sorts of things you can do with them. But I guess what, what strategies or things can you share with people if they are just not getting enough sleep, which quite frankly it sounds like the majority of us, so we're listening.
Yeah, no, right. So your basic things are the most important thing you can do is actually get educated. That's probably the first step. Because if you don't actually know that something's not quite right, you're just going to keep doing it. And that's the thing. We think we're doing things right until we find out that we're not. And it's only at that point we're willing to actually start changing things. So understanding that melatonin, which is our sleepy hormone, that starts to release 1 to 2 hours before bedtime. And that only actually releases in dim light. So if you've got all your lights blaring, all the messages that are going to your brain are not for sleep. So by the time you go to sleep, you've not kicked off the right hormones to help you actually go to sleep well. Your cortisol levels are too high. If your cortisol levels are too high, you're going to wake up throughout the night. And if it's just all these little things. Drinking plenty of water is really good as well. Alcohol. Now, this is a really tricky one because alcohol is naturally a sedative. So people think, oh, I'll have a drink. I'll never forget my dad used to sit there on the sofa and he'd wake himself up and his whiskey would be here. Oh, you know what I mean? He ended up having double heart bypass, do you know what I mean? And mini strokes. But it's, but it's like, you don't realize actually yes, it's a sedative, but the way that alcohol affects us when we're sleeping, we never actually get into a properly deep sleep. It changes our sleep architecture. So you have a lighter sleep, it's naturally more disturbed. So you could have slept for 8 hours and still wake up and feel absolutely terrible, like you've not hardly slept. So alcohol's not great. So one of the things I do say to people, I'm not going to turn around and preach and say not to have a drink, but maybe have a bit less and have it a bit earlier. So you've got a bit of more time to actually get it out of your system and maybe drink some more water before you go to bed. Try not to eat heavy meal too close to bedtime. So try not to eat anything like heavy 2 hours before bed. If you do want something to eat, there's a load of sleep promoting food. Things like bananas are really good if you like them. Can't stand them personally. But bananas are really good for actually aiding sleep. So if you need a snack, have something like that. Not exercising too close to bedtime as well. That vigorous exercise, because again, we're sending all those wrong messages to the brain to say it's wake up time.
Yeah.
Things like, if you can, meditation's great. Again, I'm not going to start turning around saying I do that. I can't do that. My brain just does not do that. But everybody's got to find what's working for them. There is no one size fits all. So whenever I do my talks and I go through all the different things, I always say to people, don't change everything at once because you won't know what's worked and you won't know what's not. So you
It's like
try
back to your science days where you have your what's it called? Yeah. You know what I mean? Your
yeah. AB's pops and
test.
whatever. Yeah. So just try one or two things and see if it makes a difference. If it doesn't, then try something else. And it's things like losing weight. And I hate talking about this because again, it's a really tricky one because we all want to lose weight. We all want to try and look after ourselves better or exercise more and things like that. But actually, if you don't understand the impact of that on sleep, so it's so tricky. If you're not sleeping well, you're then wanting to eat more sugary foods because you
Yeah.
need that to actually keep going. You're also too tired to be bothered to exercise. So those two things alone are actually going to help us gain weight. Mix that in with the fact our leptin and ghrelin are off, which is like the hormones that kind of also released during sleep that help with our appetite. We're kind of everything's on the back foot. Now, the problem that you've got with things like this, if we ignore that and we don't do something about it, we keep gaining weight, you then end up at risk of things like sleep apnea. So when you end up with sleep disorders or heart disease, and there's so many different parts that then can impact sleep even further. So
Yeah.
actually, it's that acknowledgement that yes, actually, do you know what? Sleep and weight are connected. And if we can find a way to improve our exercise, even if it's just 15 minutes a day, and I'm talking about the fact that prior to May this year, I'd never ran in my life. I used to be the person that used to look at the runners, do you know what I mean, and laugh because I was like, just not a chance. It's like, you idiots. And then we were going away to Butlins with the kids, and I was like, right, I need to lose some weight. I've got no time and I've got no money. What do I do? But I'll just start trying to run home from school after I've dropped them off. I run home and I must have stopped, bearing in mind we're only 0.4 miles away. And I must have stopped about 10 times. I got home, I was bright red, I had to lie down and I couldn't catch my breath. And I went, oh, that is how unfit I am. I was like, that is disgusting. And we're talking within a matter of weeks, I was running 2 kilometers every morning quite happily. And it was just that consistency. But what happened from that 15 minutes is I found my productivity had increased, my sleep had improved, my mental health felt better, and I actually enjoyed it, which was
Yeah.
really weird. Never
Well,
thought,
you're getting the dopamine hit, aren't
yeah.
you?
But I will say to anybody, if you think you can't, I am literally living proof that you can, because there was
Yeah.
just no way that I thought I could have ever
Yeah.
done that. But yet, things like even just 15 minutes a day, the impact that can have on your sleep is massive.
Yeah.
Mindset. Think about what you can control and what you can't control. If you can't control something, do you know what I mean? You need to just put it to bed. You
Mm.
can't take that to bed with you. If you can control it, do something about it.
Mm.
Write things down before you go to bed. So you've kind of got it out of the way. So
Mm.
it's not playing on your mind. So you're not going to
Mm.
forget it. You can come
Yeah,
back to
or a
it.
little notepad by your bed.
Yeah.
It's another good one, isn't it?
There's just little things like that. And just
Mhm.
kind of plan for what you might do in the night if you were to wake up. Don't go when, but if, and
Yeah,
have your plan so you're not saying going, oh, I'm at it again. Oh,
yeah.
I'm up again.
Yeah, exactly. In that negative self-talk, and actually, again, even speaking more kindly to yourself, be like, okay, I'm awake
Exactly.
again. That's fine, and actually, I can do some things about it. Okay, so before we begin to wrap up, Nicole, there's a couple of things that I wanted to just touch upon. The first was, I know you mentioned earlier, actually, about you said that you were almost like scared to be with your child because you were so sleep
Mm,
deprived, and obviously you couldn't emotionally regulate, so sort of that anger and stuff like that. So I know you wanted to talk about one of the um online workshops that you've got around managing sort of parental rage, I think
yeah.
you've referred to it as, and a special offer that you're going to so why don't we start
Okay.
with just a brief overview of what that is, and if people are
Yeah.
interested.
So it's really hard because obviously, especially now, we're coming up to Christmas and parental overwhelm in general, mixed with poor sleep, doesn't paint the pretty picture at all. And that the guilt we feel when we lose it at our kids and we shout at them and stuff. We're kind of going, we love these, we love them. They're our most prized possession as such. They're the things that we love the most in the world. And I can't believe as a parent, I've just totally lost it with them. And we feel like failures. And we all think we're the only person sitting behind the bathroom door crying, feeling like a failure, and we've let our children down. But actually, we're all at it because it's so, so hard. So what I've done is I've taken one of the corporate workshops that I've done, which is in parental rage, and I've recorded it. I've adapted it a bit and I've turned it into a 1 hour session where we talk about why it happens. Because if you can understand why it happens, you're going to be much kinder to yourself. And you can also then put strategies into place to maybe stop you getting to that point. But then we've also got that thing that if you do end up in that situation, how you can calm down, how you can repair that situation so you can actually come out the other side. And then that importance of reflecting on that as well. Because again, it's a huge part of this. We can't just kind of once we've kind of gone through it, you can't just go, oh right, okay, oh, I'll keep feeling guilty. Actually, looking back and reflecting on that situation, going, well, what happened? What could I do different next time? That can make a big difference. And then obviously talking about self-care and obviously a bit about basic sleep hygiene, and obviously then talking about how we can improve the run up to bedtime with our children as well in a way that actually we're connecting as a family, rather than it just being a case of right, it's bedtime, off we go, let's go to bed. How do we actually make that run up much happier, much smoother, and everybody feeling better? But what I want to do with it, it's £15, but half of that is going to go to Mind Charity, for anybody who buys it this week by Sunday. Um, so she's
Thank you. Thank you.
amazing.
And I promise you, it would be the best £15 you've ever spent. And as you say, that'll be another £7.50 donation for everyone that is purchased between now and the end of Sunday to Mine. So thank you for your generosity in that, Nicole. And what I would say is um it probably to for anyone that's listening live now and is like, oh yeah, I'd like to check that out. Perhaps you could pop the link into, there's a live chat on
I'll
the
pop your
YouTube.
link into it because that's where we know where it's all coming from.
Perfect. And then, as I said, I'll be sharing sort of links to everyone that's spoken today, like not
Yeah,
tomorrow,
yeah.
probably
Yeah.
Friday. So no, that's amazing. And I have watched it, and it's I learned um well quite a bit, both about sort of some of the science of sleep, which I like, but in an accessible, way, and some strategies for myself, but also in terms of those how to just it helped me to understand uh, ways that I can, I guess, parent in a way that I would want to maybe a little bit more, but also have that kindness to myself when and recognize that actually, yeah, I probably lost it because I haven't slept, and you've been up and down. I think even though, I mean, mine are 9 and 6 now, so they take ages to get to sleep because they're faffing about. But once they're asleep, they're asleep. But you still get the like, oh, I've had a nightmare, or like, oh, I've had a, and at 4 a.m. and then you're suddenly awake half an hour and XYZ. So what one thing, apart from making sure you get a good night's sleep, Nicole, how do you show yourself kindness?
Oh gosh, something I'm not very good at, to be fair. um, my kindness for me is helping other people. That sounds crazy, doesn't it? But
It
that's what I
doesn't sound
really
crazy.
enjoy.
It doesn't sound crazy, but I am going to challenge you. Maybe over the course of today, and you can message us later on. You mentioned you're not very good at it, and it is something that is a struggle. And I'm not saying it isn't for men or non-parents, but for working
Mm.
female mums, we tend to it always goes to the bottom of the list. So there's
Well,
a
I
little
am
chat.
being forced to go to a Christmas party when this finishes. I am being forced to go. So, and I've
Force
been
it,
some, no, no,
force
seriously, I have been
kindness.
told I have to go. She's like, no, you are coming. She says, you are coming because you deserve it. So I'm like, okay, then.
Okay. Okay. Well, do that, but also then I think, yeah, even between now and the end of the weekend, and we'll catch up because we'll check in to see how many of the courses have gone and how much extra we've raised for mine. Think about, even if it's like taking 10 minutes with a book, or having a
Mm,
walk on your own without your phone, or
yeah.
or something. So yes.
There
Well,
is
look,
one
thank
other quick
you.
thing. No, there is
Yeah.
one other quick thing. So I did mention at the beginning, there is another reason I wanted to actually be doing this specifically with Mind and the link. There's a new research project I'm starting in January, sorry, which is looking to see if there is a link between sleep deprivation and the rising postnatal depression. And part of the reason for this is actually suicide is on par with heart disease as one of the leading cause of deaths in the first 12 months after having a baby. So that is another reason why I wanted to do this today, because it's a huge thing, and obviously obviously what I'm trying to do is change that sort of prenatal postnatal
Yeah.
support system to
Yeah.
improve that, and obviously that can save lives as well.
100%. That, no, and amazing. Everything that you're doing is brilliant, and you're crusading loads of things, Nicole. So if people want to find out more about you, about the workplace sleep coach, about baby to sleep, where's the best place that they can find you, contact you?
Well, you can find me on LinkedIn. That's probably where I do all most of my chatting. But I do have two websites. I've got the workplace sleepcoach.com, which is really nice and simple, and Baby to Sleep. So if you're a parent and you need help with your child, Baby to Sleep, and it's the number 2.co.uk. If you are a workplace and you want to look at putting some strategies into place, head over to the workplace sleepcoach.com. If you are somebody that wants to back research and wants to help us fund what we're going to be starting in January, find me on LinkedIn and drop me an email, because we are looking for funding to actually help us get this research moving faster.
Amazing. Brilliant. Thank you so much, Nicole. And I can't believe how quickly well, actually, I can believe how quickly that all went, to be fair.
I can talk.
Um, but thank you so much for joining us. And like I say, I will share sort of all the links and things like that. But and yeah, if you want to share that link that you shared with me last night on the YouTube, that people can start to check out now, that would be great. And I will speak to you soon.
Will do. See you later. Good
Thanks
luck
a
with the
lot.
rest of the
Take
day.
care. Thank
See
you.
you
Bye.
later. Bye.